Thanks to everyone who came to OpenSearchCon. In my vernacular, that was totally rad. I had a great time talking to everyone, and it was great to actually put some names to some faces and some faces to names, and it was great. I talked to a lot of people, lots of enthusiasm. I genuinely had a good time. Visualizations. Tracetest is up next to share their OpenSearch integration. I've been looking forward to this one for a while.
First of all, my name is Dave. I work on the security team and OpenSearch, and I did not know that there was bouncers on this meeting, so I may have to change what I was going to say. I'm going to do it on the fly, so hopefully it'll be okay. This is a very quick plug. This very interesting presentations for today. I don't want to take a lot of time, but I wanted to talk about a PR that we put out about a week ago, where we're trying to document how we respond to security issues in the open source project. Because we had the amazing conference last week. I just want to make sure that didn't drown the spotlight, and we surface it again. This is the first step. We, as part of being a good player in the open source world, we're putting it out as a PR to invite community engagement, comments, concerns, make sure that we get it. We won't get it perfect the first time, but hopefully we'll get a good start. The major addition to this, well, of course, documenting the process and making it public is, I would say, to me, probably the most important thing that we're doing right now. But a close second is the creation of a pre-disclosure list, where we're going to start having a list of partners and contributors who we can work with under embargo to address some of the security issues. That's beneficial for a couple of key reasons, but those partners are going to be able to help us even develop fixes for those issues, because we can work together, and we'll have vehicles for doing that. And then, of course, it would also give them time to address the security issues in their for their customers and their users before they become public and people actively start trying to exploit them. So please, well, I see that. Thanks, Chris, for sharing. I think that I'm going to be sharing the link in the comments, or I see it there already. Please take a look at the PR, comment, add questions, engage there. We will be looking to merge that in the next week or two, and then it'll become policy. That doesn't mean that it'll be final. Following PRs could be made to amend it, but really excited about this. So thanks, everyone.
So hi, everyone. I'm Matheus. I'm a software engineer from Brazil, and I work for KubeShop, and I'm one of the maintainers of Tracetest. I want to present to you the integration that we implemented with OpenSearch. So now Tracetest supports OpenSearch as its tracing backend. It means that it can retrieve traces from OpenSearch. So if you have a project set up to send traces to OpenSearch, you can start testing your application using Tracetest as well. So for this demo, I already have a OpenSearch running. So you can see that it doesn't have any trace in this index traces. So let's change that. Let's install Tracetest in the demo application and point to our OpenSearch instance. So here we have in terminal, we have the CLI. I'm running latest version 7.2. So let's install the server. So we have this installer that you just answer questions and it will deal with everything for you. So I'm using Docker Compose. For that, let's make it a folder so it's more organized. So Tracetest server install. So let's use Docker Compose. I want to create a Docker Compose file. I don't have it, so it will create an empty one. I do have a trace backend, so yes, it's OpenSearch. And here I have to configure. So I'm running that on my local machine. So that would be 1701. Oops, I messed up there. Yes, OpenSearch. That's I cannot use localhost because I'm running inside Docker. So localhost will be the same container, so that will fail. So I have to use my local machine feed. Okay, I want to use traces. That's exactly the same index that we are using here. To search traces, and my data prepper, same thing. 18.1 port 890. Okay, it's localhost, so it's secure. I do not have open telemetry collector, so I'll create one. I want to give anonymous analytics, and I want the demo application to be installed as well, so I can test. So it creates everything for you. You just have to copy this comment and execute it. And if you execute both, actually everything, the collector, the demo, Tracetest, everything connected to our OpenSearch instance. Still nothing here, but if I go to localhost 8081, that's our demo. We have a couple of things here. And because I listed the Pokemons, if I go back here, I have traces now because my application is sending traces to OpenSearch. So, and because we have traces, we can start testing it. So let's go to Tracetest. And I'm going to create a test. So we have a way of, like, we have some pre-defined tests because of the demo. So we're gonna add a new Pokemon. So I don't have to fill everything. So it's to send a post request to the Pokemon API to create a Pokemon called Meow and image URL, everything. It's a JSON endpoint, and I'm going to hit create. So it we already got a response, so it's 201, and we are waiting for the trace. Okay, trace got back. That was fast. And we have the trace of the operation, and that was retrieved from the OpenSearch instance that we are running. And we can start. A very common task for applications is to define like latencies. Like, let's say we want to test our databases. So let's create, just simplify this one. I want to have all the spans that the span type is database. So those three. I want to make sure that the duration of each span is less than, let's say, 200 milliseconds. And I will save the spec. What that will do is every time we get a trace, we're gonna try to find all the spans that are of the type database and see if the duration of those spans are less than 200 milliseconds every time. So we have this test. We have 3 passing tests. That means that each span has one assertion, that is span duration is less than 200 milliseconds, and we have like 32 milliseconds, 346 microseconds, and 1 millisecond. So everything is right. So let's publish this version. And now this test can be ran again and again and again. So if you change your application, like change the way that you're saving a Pokemon into the database, you can just apply your changes, deploy your Pokemon API again, and run the test. If you execute the operation, wait for the traces, go to the OpenSearch, get that trace, and execute the assertions against that trace. So here's another execution of test, same result, same trace. And the best part is you don't have to be on this screen every time. Like, you don't have to use the UI to assert changes. You can use a CI environment because we support test definitions. You can run tests from a CLI. So, for example, if you go here on the gear test definition, you see how you create the same test using text instead of creating a test using your browser. So I'm going to copy this and let's create a test here. So I'll create test.yaml. I'll just paste this. And let's just save it. And now we can run the same test using the CLI. So Tracetest, test run. The definition file is test.yml, and I want to wait for the result so I can have a way of visualizing it. So if you go back here, you see that we have a test waiting for trace. That's exactly this one, and it finished. If I go here, I can see the trace, and if I click the link, same result. We're looking at the same test. So we can even change and see that failing. So let's say I want everything to be less than 1 millisecond. That will fail, and we can execute that and see why it fails, and using the UI to understand a bit more how the trace looks like and those things. So here it failed, and the problem was this span, and the problem was that we expected less than 1 millisecond, and we got 28 milliseconds. So if you go here, you can see that it failed, and you can go see details of the span, see what's happening, and try to debug your application using your thing, your trace, your telemetry. And that's all powered by OpenSearch. We're getting all those traces from OpenSearch. So if you already have OpenSearch, already use the trace analytics, you can start using Tracetest now to test your application and see how it behaves. And that's it for the demo.
So I have to know, the script you were using at the CLI, it looked like you had some kind of interactive menu there. So this might be just a random corollary, but did you write an ncurses based application for your installer there?
Okay, I'll installer. Say this one, right?
Yeah.
We use a library for that. Like there are a couple of libraries that enable you to build those kind of UIs that you can have interactive UI on the text-based interface. I think this one is Peter that we used.
Gotcha. I might be dating myself, but back in the day, we had to use a little program called Dialog back in the CentOS days. And it was just a command line script that you would pass a bunch of options to make menus on the screen. But anyways, I call these kinds of features chef's kiss kinds of features because they look so nice and they work very well. So anyways, sorry about the distraction there. That was just, yeah, that was a nice touch that I very much appreciated.
That's amazing.
Considered a span.
Exactly.
Just for the sake of having something to compare it to.
Exactly.
That it took me a second because when I first heard the term, I saw span, and I'm used to seeing span in terms of an HTML tag used to manipulate the screen. So when I saw a web UI and they were talking about spans, it didn't quite click right away. So it might be clarifying to someone else. I wanted to point that out.
Yeah, I think the best analogy, I think your analogy is perfect. It spans an operation inside your system. So going to the database, executing query, that's a span. Going execute something on your cache, that's another span. Opening a thread and executing something, that might be a span as well. So everything that you do in our system, that might be a span. It depends how you configure your telemetry to generate spans. But yeah,
gotcha. Well, I've never actually seen the UI to your product before, and that looked very well polished. So it looks like a cool new toy for me to play with, and that's all I need to kind of get me out of my seat a little bit. So thank you for that very much.
oh,
We had a question in the chat. Can you use it to load test? From Tony.
Can you use? Oh, okay. We didn't think about loading tests yet, but definitely in the future you'll be able to do that. If you can manage to use, let's say, JMeter to trigger the CI and trigger the operation, definitely you can use that to see if your span changes or if your telemetry changes, like latencies and those things. Definitely something that you can use Tracetest for. especially because you can see everything. Right now, we are focusing on integration tests. That's like because the integration tests are very hard to assert because it's a black box and you don't know what's happening. So as soon as you have the trace, you know what's happening. You can deep assert behaviors of your application. But definitely load tests could be using Tracetest as well.
Thank you.
Well, if there's no other questions, we may as well yield the floor to our third presenter, Xenia.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Nate. Thanks for having me.
You bet.
Proposal really quickly to the chat. I cannot do it with the screen sharing. Okay. So what I'm going to talk about is forecasting. First of all, my name is Xenia. I'm a UX designer at OpenSearch Project, and I'm working on this feature with my colleague Laura, who's also here. And we would like to make sure that we are building the right thing. So I'm going to ask a couple of questions about forecasting and related things. So this is the agenda for my presentation intro, which I'm just done. What is forecasting? Why we're talking about it? DevOps proposed workflows. This is high-level work that we're doing. And please contribute and discuss. Any feedback is welcome. And this is the GitHub proposal that I posted on the chat as well. Okay, so what is forecasting? Like within this talk, I am going to focus on the DevOps metrics. We're trying to solve for the case when, you know, a DevOps person has some metrics, maybe memory, CPU, some cluster health related visuals, some data coming in, and forecasting might help to see where all those metrics are moving. That's like big piece to be able to act in advance to, let's say, upgrade the system, clear out the logs, something like that. Another scenario might be, okay, I know something is coming and the model actually cannot catch that because, for example, the seasonality is longer than the existing data set, or I just know that there's going to be, I don't know, a major conference like OpenSearch Con, there was going to be more pressure on my system. So I'm going to try to forecast how I should be prepared, how it might affect my metrics. That's the overview. I hope it makes sense. If you have any questions, please post them in chat or just don't hesitate to disrupt me at any moment. Okay, so quick question, just maybe put yes or no in the chat. Do you use forecasting? And I'm gonna let like 30 seconds to anybody to speak up. If you do, what are you using it for? Not yet. Forecasting, not yet. For analytics. Jason, could you please elaborate on this one? We have a response.
Oh, yeah, sure. So we use forecasting for many kind of such as finance forecasting, capacity forecasting, those kind of things. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
I would like to say that I think we would have used that. It's just not available easily in the tools that we use today, but we would have used that for capacity planning and also for other operational projections that we need to make if it was available.
Can I ask you about the tools?
So we use Grafana today, and we don't use forecasting there in Grafana.
So what kind of operational metrics, if you don't mind, you can think of from the top of your mind to use forecasting for?
Right. So there are a bunch, right? So for example, if you run the service, then the first thing that comes to mind is capacity planning. Some capacity requires reserved instances and so on. So you may want to, you have to plan in advance. So forecasting is essential. Another is when you're trying to extrapolate, say, number of customers or number of customer requests and things like that.
Okay, great. Thanks. Thank you. You know, I would like to talk about it like more on the workflow, if you don't mind, how the workflow looks like for you. So do you think it should be related to like alerts on your system or like planning in advance?
Is the question whether it will be incorporated in alerting?
More like where in your like everyday workflow you see this to fit.
Right, and that's a good question. So today what we do, for example, is kind of a poor person's forecasting, right? We just put like a static limit and we say, hey, when we get to this limit, which is say, for example, let's say disk space, right? When you get to say, when you fill 80% of disk, then you send an alert, right? Send an alarm. If you know, you have like a more advanced features such as forecasting, then you necessarily don't need to wait to 80%. You can put maybe at like, you know, 30% if there is something that fills the disk very quickly. So that would be an example of how we can leverage that to gain, you know, better insight quicker.
That sounds perfect. Thank you. So let's just, you know, we're exploring some things. Yeah, please.
Yeah, this is Joshua Bright, product manager over at the OpenSearch Project. I had asked in the chat, how much data would you be working with? Like, are you for the capacity planning, or, you know, watching certain metrics as it pertains to, you know, disk space or memory usage, etc.? Like, yeah, how much data do you have that you would be referencing as part of your forecast?
When you're asking how much, do you refer to how many metrics or how many data points, or just the total?
Yeah,
I'm not sure what.
Yeah,
it
roughly,
means.
roughly days hyphen data points.
Right. Yeah, it's a good question. So I would say, let's say it really depends on the sensitivity of kind of what you're monitoring. So obviously the more granular, right, your metrics, so and the less coarse grained in terms of data point, the faster you can react, right, in terms of forecasting and other stuff. At the same time, you need to watch out for like, you know, some things, there's like some local trends as opposed to kind of more global trends. So you don't want to like get into like a jigsaw pattern that will kind of mess up forecasting. So I would say it kind of depends. I would say for capacity, this would more or less be around like days or hours. For things like disk, I can see that going for like, say, a granularity of minutes.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Okay, anybody else has feedback on this?
So is this forecasting targeted for real-time use cases for DevOps mainly, or it's a general forecasting functionality? Yeah.
So I suppose it could be both, but this particular kind of discussion is more around like real-time metrics. Can you talk more about what your interest, what would be more valuable for you as a customer to see, like what kind of functionality you would like to see?
I'm just trying to understand what's the primary target use case for this proposal going to be. Sounds like it's a real-time forecasting targeted for DevOps use case.
The assumption is that some information should, come on timely manner, and of course, cluster health metrics are important to act on quickly if something goes wrong. So yes, it's real-time forecasting.
Got it. And one more question is, would this provide any function? Is that going to be a general purpose model for everybody to use, or would there be a kind of a way for customer to customize for their own use cases?
It's hard to plan right now, so we're exploring what would be most valuable. Can you elaborate on this, like what might be more useful and how do you imagine it's to be used?
So we've been doing forecasting for different use cases. There are forecasting services already available for general purpose. And it turns out the performance is not that great, often requires some kind of fine tune for particular use cases. If a particular feature like this can also allow customer to do something like a plugin or to do something like a tune model for themselves, I think that will be highly valuable versus just a general purpose model, which may be good, but not that great. It depends on who the targeted customer is. Yeah.
Yeah, I have actually another question related to that. So what are configurations or like advanced settings that you envision might be useful for your use case?
Yeah, maybe that's too detailed, but here I'm just trying to figure out for this proposal, does the customization functionality capabilities are considered or not? That way can dive deeper into that maybe later. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Joshua, do you have anything to add on this? You might have more information on this.
Yeah, first of all, thank you a lot, Jason, for that kind of feedback. I think the way that we're thinking about it is, there will be a couple of algorithm options at the beginning, but options will move to N in the future. And we want to afford the community the ability to certainly feel free to submit other algorithms to ML Commons, which we can harness, or folks can harness on which fit their particular use case. So the user experience, we are optimizing for a general user experience, but the specifics, and that kind of goes to the advanced options of configuring each specific algorithm for each specific use case, we're trying to be mindful of. So getting more detail and breadth across the algorithms and use cases that are of interest to the community would really be beneficial for us, so that we can create kind of what you would think of as an advanced path, which would allow someone to configure the algorithm in a way that meets their needs. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
So you'll have to forgive my question here, but wouldn't the forecasting be only as good as the data that you use to train it with? Isn't it, there's a certain level of training that has to go on, yeah?
Yeah, so the algorithm that is used allows to get predictions really quickly, and of course it's a matter of like training it over time, but also it's pretty much real time as well.
Gotcha. So it kind of it self-learns over time.
Yes, and as Joshua asked, like we're trying to figure out like how much data would be readily available for the forecasting in the DevOps use case, for example.
I see.
Right, because we I think you'll probably get to the specific, but I see a delineation between the DevOps site reliability persona, which has a tendency of keeping log data because it's expensive between 90 and 120 days. And then there's a different persona that's more of a data analyst persona that focuses on things like inventory, operational metrics like revenue and things like that. So anyway, I think Xenia will get into the flows and we'll be able to dive deeper and riff together.
Yeah, so the GitHub proposal link is on the slides, and I also posted it in the chat. There is more information there. So please take a look. There are more user stories and things, use cases that we're focusing around for this feature. So I would like to encourage everybody to check it out. So for the flows, I have high-level proposed flows for forecasting, how user might discover it, how it might fit into like everyday workflow, which I asked about. So I have a couple of options and I would like to discuss with everyone. So first one would be from forecast from dashboard visualization. So let's say we have a dashboard and on one time-based visualization, you can easily trigger forecast and see augmented view of where the metric is going, like what is the trend. Share results really quickly, something optional, or adjust settings to advanced. And this is what I asked about, like what might be interesting in terms of training the model and see more accurate results here, and then trigger it again. And this way the model can update the results and get the forecast that would be more accurate. This is part of kind of looking at all the metrics on the dashboard itself. That's one proposed flow for forecasting. It might be also is as part of the flow of like visualizing some, let's say, log data from either observability or like general dashboard visualization. So when visualization is configured with all the parameters like axis, data, metrics, etc., the forecast could be run from there. And then graph saved on the dashboard. So user can see where the metrics are going and like what to plan for to get back maybe later. That's another way. Does it make sense to think about it this way? Just please let me know. I have one more, either in chat or I would like to hear from everyone. And another one is more related to alerts. We have threshold alerts. Those thresholds could be added at any moment, like with different triggers. And some of them could use forecast to kind of get more fine-grained picture and also maybe alert in advance based on some insights that forecasting model can get to while running forecast in the background. So the workflow would look like user would like to start on the dashboard, define thresholds, run forecast, see kind of trend is going here or there, and also add another layer of alerts, maybe less intrusive for predictive alerts. So it's kind of another backup thinking here and act on them like upgrade system, etc. and save monitor. Those are high-level flows that I'm thinking about right now. Any feedback is welcome. Please just let me know which one makes more sense, which one you can see in your like everyday flow.
So I'm just wondering, like, when you run forecast, then it's sort of a thing that you have to click and then you have to wait. Is it possible that it's sort of kind of like a detector, like something that always runs, and you kind of have a graph, and you always see sort of like the kind of the forecast, the future long tail of it.
Yeah, I believe for especially with alerting, the forecast is supposed to run all the time in the background, and you can navigate to the visualization and see how it, like the graph is actually does look.
Cool, thank you.
I believe anomaly detection algorithm works like this right now in the dashboards. I mean, in OpenSearch.
Yeah, which is exactly, which is why I was asking.
So what is your concern? Like, is it performance or something else?
No, not a performance. I was more just asking because it seemed like a static thing where you'd constantly have to like push a button to like get it to refresh, and it seems like something that for like operational things that should kind of be just feeling more natural, that it's automatically refreshed. But it sounds like you kind of already had that in mind. So
yeah, I hear you. This seems, maybe this one seems a bit tedious, like to rerun. It's not necessarily happening like this, and thanks for your feedback. It's just, you know, kind of conceptually how there was a visualization and then it becomes augmented with forecasting.
Got it.
I'd like to, this is Joshua again. I'd like to kind of jump in a little bit more into that. So the user flow, when somebody is interacting with visualization dashboard, at the moment, the proposal is looking at, you know, someone initiating a forecasting visualization. And Sima, you had talked about, you know, some kind of state where, are you saying that you would anticipate that once the forecast has been triggered for a visualization, that you would expect it to save that state in the future, so that when you bring up that dashboard hyphen visualization or vice versa, that you would expect the forecasted view to show up, or would you anticipate that you would just like do it piecemeal?
Yeah, I was more like thinking, say in many operational cases, right? When you're trying to forecast, you basically have to choose like a time window, like a sliding window, right? Or upon which you're forecasting, and then you sort of always want to see the forecast, right, on like your dashboard. So you might want to be able to tune, you know, the sliding window in which you're like creating the forecast. And that's kind of what I had in mind. I think I don't think like you necessarily have to keep the state, but again, that's it would be nice if you could, like, say, take a snapshot, which is more than a visual one, just an actual snapshot of what the forecast would look like, but still it's
and the snapshot for that purpose would be to share it with colleagues and things like that.
Yeah, basically, hey, I evaluated this forecast and I used this model and this data, and this is what the forecasting was like. Yeah.
Cool, I have another question. Thank you. Yeah, if you don't mind, we briefly touched like what if scenario. Do you see any use in your like operational metrics monitoring for what if, like some changes that you plan, for example?
What if?
Let's say I know there's going to be more pressure on the system because we're expecting a big launch.
Yeah, like if we postpone this operation, let's say this optimization to the code, right? Then what is the forecast for like the next year? If we do that, then what is the forecast for the next year? So we can make a decision. I can see that happening, yes. So you can kind of show those side by side and assess the business impact. And that would be nice.
So what kind of metric it might be, just from the top of your mind?
What kind of metric? So let's say if we think of capacity, and we're planning to make an optimization that makes things more efficient and reduces capacity. So this is just an example from service I worked on in the past. And many times was the question of like, okay, what is going to happen if, you know, if you have that versus if you don't have that. So we had to kind of do lots of, we had to go through through a lot of work to kind of show both cases. So I think this is actually a very nice way if you can basically show these kind of side by side. If you can plot both the side by side, that would be pretty nice.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
You're welcome.
Okay, so I have those explorations here. Any feedback? I have the questions here. Okay, I see more in the chat. I like the look of the predictive alerts. Thank you so much. Would you like to talk about it some more? What might be your use case? How do you imagine that? Okay, one more question. Any additional configurations that might be useful? Thanks for the feedback in the chat. Yeah.
So I know that, I guess I don't know too much about this kind of thing, but I mean, are there general tolerances that you can set to kind of say, well, this kind of looks like an anomaly, but it's not enough of an anomaly, or, you know, the forecast looks like this, but it's got to be, you know, plus or minus, you know, X number of units. Is there any kind of fuzziness that you can add to these kinds of predictions that might seem like something someone would want to use?
So the alerting on prediction is might be very powerful, but also very tedious to configure, or very kind of disturbing in terms of a lot of noise. So those are the problems that we are trying to address as well. We're trying to make like alerting, combining threshold alerts and predictive alerts more seamless and, you know, like the most beneficial as possible. That's why we are asking, like, how would it relate to alerting in anybody's use case? I see, you know, feedback on this, like what might be the metrics to count and to receive threshold alerts.
Yeah, the primary
please.
Oh, sorry for interruption. The primary use case for forecasting, such as for my team, we currently use is mainly for offline analysis, for business forecasting. In terms of DevOps, real-time alerting, so far we don't have that kind of use case. I'm just wondering, for real-time DevOps forecasting, what are the primary target use cases for this feature going to be? Because if you're trying to forecast alerts, right? Majority of the team currently, even for the existing real alerts, you know, have limited time to handle all of that. If you're forecasting a false positive, all those kind of things, you know, what would be the primary kind of use cases for real-time DevOps forecasting for this? Yeah.
just like you're saying, when something goes wrong, it might be for DevOps, it might be too late to act on it. So predictive alert received in advance, maybe not very prominent, like not paging everywhere, but you know, a little alert on that something is trending not in the right direction. This is something that we're considering. Does it make sense?
Yeah,
It's
I
not
mean,
predicting
yeah,
alert coming.
it makes sense. So the key thing is how to, you know, what's the story for false positive, you know, kind of thing, you know, what's other main use cases, maybe laser focus on that one for this one, you know. To my knowledge, a lot of real alerts, a lot of team even don't have time to handle everything on time. You know, for this one, it come if a lot of false positive, you know, people might just ignore that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So Joshua,
if I
do you
could,
have?
if I
Yeah,
could step
please,
in
Nate.
just for a minute, we're coming up on the hour, so I wanted to give everyone a chance to, you know, I'm not going to stop the meeting or anything. I don't have any meetings coming up. I'm going to leave this going on. But if anyone needs to go, now is the time. Looks like we're 2 minutes to 9. So I wanted to thank everyone for coming. And there's no further things on the agenda, but I think this is a valuable discussion and we should continue it here. So I'm going to go ahead and stick around.
Yeah, I would like to thank
and
everyone.
Of course, yeah, and of course, if anyone has any questions for the other two presenters as well that they've thought up of in the meantime, I would like some open Q&A, and then we can continue this in a little bit. And so far, it looks like everyone is captivated. Okay, well, if there's no questions for the other two presenters, I have no objection to sticking around and having this conversation because it's a good one. So please feel free to continue. I'm sorry for interrupting.
So
Jason, I think back to your piece about alerting fatigue is an overall theme. I feel like the way that you're describing it is kind of fundamentally there's a problem with false positives in alerting, and by adding a gentle nudge of forecasting, we're potentially moving in a direction where we're just adding noise. Am I hearing that correctly?
Yeah, absolutely.
In some of the tools that you use, have you found that there are certain ways that folks are handling alerts better, maybe with some kind of feedback mechanism?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, for forecasting, we try to tie it with some kind of offline analysis related. I mentioned capacity forecasting. This actually does not need to alert people, but to give information back to the business to order more rack machines, for specific region is hot or something like that, which requires tons of signals all the way from sign up or events or marketing, a lot of things, that's the reason we do it offline. So for this, I understand it's might related with kind of DevOps. So my question was that if we are taking this forecasting capability into DevOps, I'm just wondering what are the primary use cases? Is that going to be forecasting service, how to say, availability or scalability or those kind of things, or maybe it's service capacity related stuff? And that's one thing. And the other thing is, in the previous chart, you can see there is a trigger of forecasting, right? There is an evaluation. So that evaluation need to be self-tuned to, how to evaluate model performance. And if it's good, bad, we select a different model, continuously tune until it's ready, confident, then deploy in production. That takes a lot of time. Yeah.
Yeah,
it's
I see two distinct kind of personas and the delineation between the personas feels like it is, and they're kind of related. But I think that the hardest line down the middle of personas is, data availability based on X amount of days of data hyphen, the granularity of that data. And then the other piece is response time, expected response time. And for the DevOps use case, what we're targeting is, folks that want to watch the availability of their nodes and their services, right? And so they want to watch the trending of, how many errors are coming back in the service, what node attributes are they watching, such as memory or disk space. And I think to another one that was provided by Tony, which would be doc count. For those who are interested in capacity planning, and they have a fairly complex set of metrics, that seems like it lends itself to what you're saying, Jason, is kind of an offline experience where the response time to calculate and forecast would be a lot longer. It wouldn't lend itself necessarily to hey, just show me a little bit, in the future, like a week or so, where this is trending. So I feel like it would be good to understand what types of metrics you're thinking for this capacity use case, because it feels like this may be like a multi-dimensional use case instead of just a single metric forecast. Am I reading that correctly?
Yeah, so overall, I think, as you can see, DevOps forecasting, to my limited knowledge, we haven't seen that a lot being adoption in the industry. So we'd be very interested to see what could came out of from this proposal and what are the primary use case who can influence the industry. But that's the primary, the BI analytics, there's a lot of use cases. DevOps,
absolutely.
Which one we want to target it. And once we forecast, what kind of action user can take instead of just visualize that, right? The actionable forecasting, people can take action. That's, I do not have a clear picture of that. So this one, if we can get that figured out, that would be super awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think in terms of the proposal, I think that we've delineated between those two use cases of basically, lots of data versus a shorter amount of data, or multi-dimensional, or single kind of metric. So I think getting, without obviously sharing too much of your situation, especially if it's a sensitive situation, getting your specific use cases in there, I think will help us as we explore more on what we're kind of calling the data analyst persona.
Yeah, appreciate your time. Thank you.
Yeah.
Imagine we can stop the recording unless anyone has any good dad jokes that they'd like to share. We had our early check-in with a few dad jokes. There's always room for more. Anyone have any good ones?
I'll stop the recording.
Oh no, we got to get the dad. Oh no, I'm just kidding.